Hi, welcome to this week's devotional. I know that some of you from time to time ask me about the pictures I use for my video backgrounds, and often they're of the church at Crosswaite or local landmarks. And the one I've got today actually is somewhere a little bit sunnier. It's a picture from Sorrento. After all the wind, the rain, the cold, I thought we'd have a bit of a change, and appropriate also because the reading for this week and the reflection I'm offering is about journeys, going from different places. It's the story after the resurrection of Jesus about him meeting disciples on the road to Emmaus. So Luke chapter 24, verses 13 to 35. That same day, two of the disciples were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened. As they talked and discussed these things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked along with them, but they were kept from recognizing him. He asked them, "What are you discussing together as you walk along?" They stood still, their faces downcast. One of them, named Cleopas, asked him, "Are you only a visitor to Jerusalem and do not know the things that have happened there in these days?" "What things?" he asked. "About Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. "He was a prophet, powerful in word and deed before God and all the people. The chief priests and our rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. What is more, it is the third day since all this took place. In addition, some of our women amazed us. They went to the tomb early this morning, but didn't find his body. They came and told us that they'd seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. Then some of our companions went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said. But him they did not see." He said to them, "How foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Did not the Christ have to suffer these things and then enter his glory?" Beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them what was said in all the scriptures concerning himself. As they approached the village to which they were going, Jesus acted as if he were going further. But they urged him strongly, "Stay with us, for it is near the evening, the day is almost over." So he went in to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, gave thanks, broke it, began to give it to them. Then their eyes were opened and they recognized him, and he disappeared from their sight. They asked each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he talked with us on the road and opened the scriptures to us?" They got up at once and returned to Jerusalem. There they found the 11 and those with them assembled together and saying, "It is true. The Lord has risen and has appeared to Simon." Then the two told what had happened on the way, how Jesus was recognized by them when he broke the bread. An unexpectedly eventful journey. Now here's a well-loved and familiar poem about the journey of life called Footprints in the Sand. I'm sure many or perhaps all of you are familiar with it. One night, a man had a dream. He dreamed he was walking along the beach with the Lord. Across the sky flashed scenes from his life. For each scene he noticed two sets of footprints in the sand, one belonging to him and the other to the Lord. When the last scene of his life flashed before him, he looked back at the footprints in the sand. He noticed that many times along the path of his life there was only one set of footprints. He also noticed that it happened at the very lowest and saddest times of his life. This really bothered him, and he questioned the Lord about it. "Lord, you said that once I decided to follow you, you'd walk with me all the way. However, I noticed that during the most troublesome times of my life, there was only one set of footprints. I didn't understand why. When I needed you most, you would leave me." The Lord replied, "My precious, precious child, I love you and I would never leave you. During your times of trial and suffering, when you see only one set of footprints, it was then that I carried you." I guess we perhaps are all familiar with that poem. Um, it describes God's presence with us throughout our lives, times of loneliness and abandonment, times of companionship and joy. And since being written by Carolyn Joyce Cart in 1963, it's been a well-loved source of comfort and inspiration. So yes, it's a poem, but there's a biblical truth here, isn't there? Psalm 77, verse 19, for example, says, "Your path led through the sea, your way through the mighty waters, though your footprints were not seen." There's also a connection with the meeting on the road to Emmaus. Jesus walked with his disciples, but they were unaware. Was he any less present, any less real, any less there because they didn't realize it was him? No, no, and no. Well, the location of biblical Emmaus is inevitably, as many places are in the Holy Land, disputed, as it's a fairly common place name in the region. It's a word, Emmaus, that comes from the Semitic word for warm spring, and the Hebrew Hamah, or Hamat, and in the ancient and present day Middle East, lots of sites are called Hama Hamath. For example, the old Roman road from Jerusalem to the village of Kalunia or Motza is one of the suggested sites. I also read a couple of years ago that a pilgrim route, as it were, from Jerusalem to Emmaus had been opened, linking with yet another of the proposed locations. It's a similar kind of circumstance to the location of Cana in Galilee, of which there's more than one suggested site. But as in many places in the New Testament, though, that's not perhaps the main point, because the main point, the real thing, is it's the encounter with Jesus that's the most important, the encounter with Jesus that's most important. That same day, two of the disciples were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened. As they talked and discussed these things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked along with them. So journeys, pilgrim routes, going from A to B, it involves much more than travelling by map. Our journeys involve so much more, don't they? Words and images, experiences and sounds, tastes and smells, the company of others. The BBC, for example, has often made a feature of programmes on pilgrimage, and we're told there's a great interest in pilgrimage and that kind of theme in people's lives today. A programme that Judith and I watched once was following a group of people who weren't all Christians, and they were going on a journey to Fatima in Portugal, and they all had different reasons for taking part. What was both surprising and yet not surprising, though, was that it was the company of others and the sharing of experiences that bonded people together. The people walking through Portugal, and this on its own just opens up a simple truth, really. When we're on a journey, we talk to each other. Fancy that. If we're talking to each other, we can include Jesus in the conversation. And if we'd like people to consider talking to Jesus for themselves, then often the first step is for us to talk to them as people first. But the Emmaus Road journey, or our own journeys with Jesus, are a natural place to talk and share and learn and grow. We think, we talk, we explore. What also intrigued me about the pilgrimage programme we watched, though, was that, in a way, the destination was, perhaps to the folks involved, less important than the journey. The destination was the goal, of course, but the journey was where change took place. It reminds me of the memorable words of Jesus in Matthew 11:28, and I'll read them here in the well-loved and frankly often quoted, but for a good reason, Message translation. Are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. Walk with me. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. And was there ever a paraphrase of a Bible text as insightful as learn the unforced rhythms of grace? Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. Well, that was a BBC programme about pilgrimage with a religious sort of shape to it. But we also recently watched some of a quite different programme about journeys, which had returned for a new series. And that's a series called Race Across the World. You've probably heard of it, may have watched it at some point or heard people talk about it. And that's not a pilgrimage, but it's a journey. Teams of two compete to get from A to B the quickest, and they're often travelling through and across several different countries and trying to discover the best way of doing that and facing up to that challenge and how they achieve that. And what happens, of course, along the way is that the people also discover things about themselves, about each other, about the country they're trying to navigate. And we, as the viewers, discover all this about them as well without having to leave home. And I think the episode we saw, they were navigating from Sicily across Italy over to Greece, and that was of particular interest to us as we've loved to visit Italy over the years. And well, here we are, Sorrento in the background. Now it's almost as though for people in a race across the world, as with pilgrimages, the journey becomes one with the destination. And sometimes the destination feels less important in a way, not of itself, but it becomes one with the journey. So let's remind ourselves again what happened on the road from Jerusalem. Jesus himself came up and walked along with them. So the company of Jesus, his footsteps alongside our footsteps. Jesus walked with his unknowing disciples. They shared their disappointment. We'd hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. They shared their doubt. He was a prophet, powerful in word and deed before God and all the people. What happened? They shared their sadness. They stood still, their faces downcast. And they shared their confusion. Some of our women amazed us. They went to the tomb early this morning, but didn't find his body. What's going on? I wonder, do we share these kind of things with Jesus? Do we share our confusion, our doubt, our uncertainty, our sadness, and our needs? Do we share those things with Jesus? And do we always need an answer, or is the sharing sometimes enough to help us go on? Sometimes I think the sharing is enough to help us go on. Well, Jesus himself did a bit of sharing too. He shared in the Emmaus Road encounter what was said about himself in the scriptures. He shared that his journey was continuing. He shared his company, and he shared the truth of his resurrection. They realized he was alive. And how was that truth shared? How was Jesus revealed to them? Not just with words, though words were and are important, but Jesus was revealed in familiar things: the sight, the touch, the smell, the taste of breaking bread. I've met Jesus in some unexpected places, and I'm also sure that he's been there when I didn't realise. Imagine that for the two disciples who met him on the road to Emmaus, Cleopas and another unnamed disciple, that's one of those questions many people would like to find answered in heaven, I think. For those two disciples, no journey was ever quite the same again. Did they look for Jesus in every stranger, I wonder? Did they feel Jesus present, the day-to-day familiar things, the breaking of the bread, Did they share their Jesus journey with others with new confidence? There's a famous painting by Caravaggio called Supper at Emmaus, and it shows Jesus seated with three others who are listening to him. One of them sat in a chair, has his hands on the arm of the chair. So he's about to rise. It's as though he's suddenly realised that this is Jesus and he has to do something, he has to respond, he has to engage. I wonder, when we realise Jesus is with us, I wonder, what will we do? The most disciples had no doubt because they hurried to tell others. It is true, the Lord has risen. So where will we meet with Jesus? And what will we do? And let's pray. Lord Jesus, meet with us on our journeys. Help us to recognise you at work and your presence, and where that's more difficult for us to recognise, help us nevertheless to have that sense of calm assurance that you are with us and for us and will help us and will lead us and guide us. For your heart is to bless us and to lead us into your truth. And we thank you as we ask and pray in your name. Amen. Take care. God bless you.